Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Cody Bann, who serves as Director of Engineering for Win-911 software, where he leverages his 15 years of software development experience with the Austin-based company. Cody earned a Master of Science in Computer Science from the University of Texas at Austin and a BA in Computer Science from Boston University. Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
For starters, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into the control system integration space?
Sure. So I actually started with Win-911 as a junior level software engineer 15 years ago, and I quickly fell in love with the application because its impact was so apparent to me. My family gets its drinking water from a municipality that uses Win-911. My parents do. My wife's parents do. In fact, the 10 largest cities in the country, along with a lot of major world cities like London and Barcelona, they all use Win-911. And so it's extremely satisfying knowing that I have an impact on something like that. Beyond helping deliver safe drinking water, Win-911 has customers in just about every vertical: oil and gas and life sciences, food and beverage, batch and discrete manufacturing, power generation, distribution, even data centers. There's also many wonderfully unique and noteworthy use cases. NASA uses Win-911 where they test the rockets for the new Artemis program, and in Dubai, they keep exotic aquatic species alive in the middle of the desert and monitor them through our software. New Zealand monitors seismic activity so that the authorities there know when to evacuate ahead of disasters and save human life. And Win-911 is part of the first responder communication system that's in the New World Trade Center. And we even help a UK company with its environmental remediation that goes across Europe. So there's a lot of really worthwhile endeavors that we help facilitate, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to those sentiments. Overall, I'd say the widespread use of Win-911 really illustrates to me the importance of my work and the work that my team does. And those more exotic use cases emphasize the opportunity for impact beyond even what anyone imagined when we were designing the software.
So if you're at a cocktail party or out in the world somewhere and somebody asks you what you do for a living, how do you describe that?
Well, whether you're baking cookies or you're running a nuclear reactor, we make the software that delivers the right information to the right people at the right time to keep those things running smoothly and to coordinate a response when there's a bump. So I work with a great team of talented software engineers, and we design and we build and we test the computer programs that really bridge the gap between the machines and the sensors that are driving our modern existence and the people who are responsible for those machines. I work closely with our product owner to understand the technical requirements and challenges there of the new use cases that come up, and I architect solutions around those cases to let them be more easily maintained as they evolve.
Talk a little bit about Win-911 as a company. What's the history and how has it evolved over time?
The company had its start in 1984 as a hardware manufacturer. We built protocol converters back then that provided interfacing to a lot of different PLCs, programmable logic controllers. And that was in many ways a very different business, but it exposed us to a lot of the same vendors and integrators and customers that we still work with today. Our transition to software began in the early 90s with the launch of a product called TeleDAC, Telephone Data Acquisition and Control. It was a simple Windows application that allowed monitoring of process variables through DDE and Wonderware SCADA. And it provided some rudimentary alarm notification via phone and pager and email. So when your pressure went too high, suddenly your pager was buzzing or your phone was ringing. And compared to the auto dialers of its day, it was cutting edge technology. TeleDAC was rebranded as Win-911 around the millennium. And by the time I joined in 2007, it had really evolved to communicate with many other SCADA systems. was capable of text-to-speech, voice synthesis, which was really cool at the time. It supported a lot more telephony cards, email servers, newer operating systems, more advanced pagers, the alphanumeric ones. Anybody remembers those? The company was still servicing hardware, but it was no longer manufacturing it. The team was really eager at the time to add SMS notification capabilities. And I had the good fortune to be hired on to lead that project. So 2007 was a year when SMS usage began to really explode in the US. So the effort was very timely. And as that project got far enough along, I took the initiative to write a simple BlackBerry app that would present those SMS messages better. It would sort the related messages into threads and make acknowledgement easy. And that was really the start of smartphone notification with Win-911. So my boss, who was a BlackBerry user, of course, liked it and pushed it into formal production. And it was all BlackBerry and Windows Mobile back then. But our mobile architecture is fundamentally different now. The mobile app's now our flagship notifier, and it's evolved beyond notification to handle many other use cases. It lets our teams chat in the context of an alarm condition. It lets operators adjust their on-call role or their call-out order. It lets managers view alarm history. A lot of those iterative improvements were really reflective of how industry evolved alongside us. Operators and managers, they changed devices as iPhone and Android rose to dominance. Smartphones and later tablets became more ubiquitous on the plant floors, and a newer, less experienced generation of technicians and operators needed to communicate more with the older generation to help solve problems. Most recently, companies have been embracing remote workers and empowering remote collaboration. And there are traces of all of that on the mobile feature set as it's evolved through its releases. The Teledac product evolved too. We moved from a monolithic process to a network distributed modular application that fits the Purdue model, one that allows internet-facing notification modules to be distributed physically from the SCADA-facing source modules for enhanced cybersecurity. We added more advanced escalation and features like realarming. We introduced dynamic notification policies that change as the organization changes by defining notification logic in terms of roles rather than specific people. And we embrace subscription filtering to allow notification on new alarms as they're created in the SCADA without a need to reconfigure Win-911. We localized the product and translated it to 10 different languages as we've expanded our international efforts. We've kept up with numerous operating system and SCADA version releases over the years. And most recently, we added support for new OPC protocols, allowing us to receive both data and alarm events from more sources as industry continues to adopt OPC UA over the earlier OPC Classic protocols.
Yeah, RIP the BlackBerry. It was so popular, and then poof, it was gone. I do admit I kind of miss my clamshell. There was something super satisfying of like clicking it shut when you wanted to, when you're done with a call, you clicked it shut. Maybe you're too young for the clamshell, but OMG, can you believe it's the middle of the year already? If you're like me, that's shocking. On the upside, it means I can offer you something special if one of your goals for 2022 is to join CSIA. And why wouldn't you? This 500-member global community has so much to offer SIs, from best practices to certification to professional development, and even access to professional services experts, including insurance, financial, and legal, who understand the SI's unique business needs. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow your SI programs, understand your customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share your thought leadership. Best of all, CSIA is a soft place to land. By that, I mean it's a community of like-minded people who are willing to share, commiserate, and celebrate your wins, your losses, and your vision. So what are you waiting for? Oh, you're probably waiting for my special offer. Here it is. For the months of July and August, membership dues and all Industrial Automation Exchange upgrades and packages are half price. And no, this is not half off like I am crazy Jimmy yelling, everything must go. It's really just because CSIA prorates its dues. But boy, that lacks excitement, doesn't it? To find out more, visit www.controlsys.org/shine. Wait, maybe I should go the crazy Jimmy route after all? Tell us a little bit about your success in the marketplace.
Well, with almost 30 years of experience focused on alarm notification for control systems, Win-911 is currently installed on almost 20,000 locations worldwide. One of our key reasons for success over the years has been our strategic partnerships with GE, with Rockwell, and with Aviva. And those partnerships have provided our software with interfaces that allow us to offer users direct connectivity with their SCADA for easier installation and easier deployment, as well as reduced ongoing maintenance. System integrators worldwide partner with us to provide a turnkey solution while maintaining their secure and reliable ecosystem. Win-911 is an industry leader with the most options for notification methods, including a state-of-the-art mobile app that I spoke about. Our continued commitment to excellence and compatibility with the most recent offerings from our partners ensures that our users have access to the latest technology for sustained protection of their operations and investments.
So something that I've wondered for a really long time, what is the origin of the name Win-911? Like,
Sure.
Is that an acronym? Is it a call for help?
No, in the 90s, a lot of software for Windows was prefixed with Win. So you still WinZip survives to this day, WinRAR. So Win comes from the idea that we were a Win32 application, and 911 comes from the emergency response that, is very well known in the United States. Outside of the US, a lot of customers refer to us as Win-911 and make that link. But the idea of emergency response is there either way.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny how when you think about branding, you think you've got it all covered. I've thought of everything. I've Googled it, blah, blah, blah. And then something like that happens and poof.
Absolutely.
So interesting. So what advice would you give to a prospective customer researching you versus a competitor?
Well, we always recommend end users do their research and find the solution that best fits their organization. Most of the time, that's us. Win-911 provides a simple and a flexible pricing model. It offers both perpetual and subscription solutions to fit various deployment sizes and budgetary requirements. There's no hidden fees. Our pricing is always published. We have flexible support offering multiple tiers, including 24/7. And it enables your team to customize a product support package, including a technical support, training, consultation, really to fit all project sizes. In addition to our strong partnerships with GE, Rockwell, and Aviva, Win-911 fully embraces many open OPC standards to integrate seamlessly into many more automation systems.
What challenges are your customers facing right now?
With a broad user base, challenges abound. We've got environmental, economic, demographic, technical. In the water sector, some customers are coping with severe drought conditions right now, while others are facing exactly the opposite problem of flooding. And climate change is only increasing that globally. Those that are fortunate enough to face neither flooding nor drought are probably seeing population growth that's creating enormous pressure to do more with less and to stop leaks in urban environments. So that's a hot topic within water. Manufacturing has had a moment of reckoning with just-in-time supply chains, and they're still working through that. With the threat of possible recession, efficiencies are of heightened concern. For highly specialized operations, the demographic challenge of onboarding the next generation to adequately replace aging experts is a real concern in most developed economies. And it's one that's been accelerated by the recent pandemic. And probably the one concern that affects the majority of customers across all verticals is cybersecurity. Just about everyone's doing more with the cloud than they were 5 years ago. And with OT air gaps going away, the concern is growing over potential vulnerabilities. Recent high-profile attacks on infrastructure and current geopolitical tensions are heightening those concerns.
What kinds of trends are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
Well, lights-out manufacturing is becoming a goal for a lot of long-term planning, but in practice, it's still years away. Artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, they're largely still more hype than practical solutions, but they're certainly climbing that curve now. Computer vision solutions in particular have reached a point of maturity where they're driving productivity across many problem domains. Beyond that, AI predictive maintenance is seeing some success with uniform, high volume, high value assets like turbines. So that's what's coming. But what's here in full force, I would say, is the IT-OT convergence, the muddling of that previously distinct world of information technology, which systems have been networked and sharing information for years, with more physical world of operational technology where digital information has been siloed by design. And the industrial Internet of Things is connecting sensors not with the deep L1 or L2 networks of supervisory control, but with the Internet directly. Companies have seen gains from shifting IT resources to the cloud, and they're now wanting to realize the same gains with OT computing resources. So that's the incentive that's driving OT software to the cloud and to connect with the cloud and to communicate over more open standards. The air gaps are largely going away, and that creates the potential to process that previously siloed data for greater productivity, but also increases the risk to real physical assets. So cybersecurity is a much bigger topic and concern because of that shift.
Let's talk about it a little bit. How have cybersecurity risks presented themselves recently?
Well, just last year, we saw 2 concerning attacks on water infrastructure, as well as a highly publicized attack on Colonial Pipeline. So I think those are good representative examples. In Oldsmar, Florida, last February, there was a water treatment plant worker who noticed that it was a mouse cursor moving on a screen of an HMI system. An attacker had gained access to the desktop remotely, and they temporarily raised an input value on the HMI to raise sodium hydroxide levels from about 100 parts per million to over 100 times that, well outside the safe limit. Fortunately, the worker that was on site acted immediately to restore levels and prevented a public health emergency. U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, afterwards, they assessed that the attacker had gained access to the system via TeamViewer, which is a remote desktop application that's used frequently by IT administrators. But the plant was using that in an unsecure manner. Their report also noted that the plant was using Windows 7, which was well beyond end of support at that time. It used the same passwords for different computers. It had no firewalls. So the event really revealed just how vulnerable a lot of small municipalities are as they struggle to keep up with IT. And just a month prior to that attack in Oldsmar, a water treatment plant was servicing the San Francisco Bay Area was attacked. There too, the attackers gained access via TeamViewer. There, the plant had firewalls, they had updated software, it was doing most things right, but the attackers used a username and password that belonged to a former employee and hadn't been properly removed from the system. So once they were logged in, the attacker deleted programs that were used for water treatment. Fortunately, the attack did not affect the public, but it wasn't discovered until the next day, which is concerning. In both of those cases, the SCADA system seemed to have been overly exposed to the internet. And that's certainly a common theme that's faced across many water authorities and other verticals as well. And then in May 2021, Colonial Pipeline, which operates a major world pipeline across the Southeast United States, it was targeted by a ransomware attack. So ransomware is a type of malware that locks access to files or the whole computer until a ransom is paid. So the prevalence of ransomware attacks actually increased dramatically last year. And a survey by Sophos showed that 2/3 of organizations were hit by at least one attack, and nearly half of those paid the ransom. Colonial Pipeline certainly wasn't alone, but to contain the spread of the malware, they halted all pipeline operations, which did not go unnoticed. And they paid the ransom to restore operations, but their own backups and continuity plans were actually faster than the decryption provided by the attackers. And so the moral of the story is really to have a robust continuity plan and to stop paying those criminals. In addition to those examples, I'd say there's been increased attention on indirect exploits as a potential vulnerability. There was a neat example of that at a recent security conference. A presenter demonstrated an attack on an industrial system that was meant to drive home just how surreptitious the hacking of cyber physical systems might be. Those are physical systems that can be manipulated by digital means. And with a laptop connected to this massive, expensive industrial pump, she showed how a hacker could leverage a hidden and highly destructive weapon that was inherent to the system. Midway through her talk, she pointed at this Flowware pump system that was on stage. It was roughly the size of a big rig truck engine, and it was loudly cycling water through a series of transparent pipes. And she cued a hacker in a black hoodie on stage who typed a command in, and then a thick flow of bubbles appeared. Now, a sensor on the pump was registering that those bubbles were subtly vibrating the pump, and that was reducing its efficiency and slowly damaging it. In a matter of hours, she said, the bubbles would start to wear pits in the pump's metal surfaces, and in days, it would wear down the impellers until it was rendered useless. And that was an effective demonstration. More importantly, the demonstration showed that the hacker delivered those bubbles without having any access to the pump component. Instead, he had only adjusted a valve further upstream to decrease pressure. And so the lesson there is that protecting physical assets goes well beyond those specific assets, and it requires a real systemic analysis. An attacker only has to find one chink in the armor.
As a podcast listener, you know that podcasts are, well, they're having a kind of a moment. And while the Talking Industrial Automation podcast is no crime junkie, it does have more than 93,000 downloads since inception in 2018. In fact, it's very typical that an episode gets 1,000 downloads within weeks of dropping, numbers that only the top 5 to 10% of podcasts attain according to Buzzsprout data. Why am I telling you all this? Because I want you to be able to tap into this audience by purchasing a 60-second spot. If you are looking to fill your pipeline of talent, for instance, what better way to show the younger demographic that you are an innovative company willing to meet your audience where they are? Or maybe you're launching a product or service or just have something to say. The Talking Industrial Automation podcast is the place to do it. Contact me, Lisa Richter, at podcast@controlsys.org. As the saying goes, let me help you. Can you explain why so many SCADA systems are overexposed to the internet?
It's really out of an attempt to offer process and asset information to operators. So you have more and more remote operators. Organizations are trying to provide them the information they need, but they're providing them much more. They're ignoring the principle of least privilege, and they're opening up their entire control system, their host computing environments, to remote desktop access, really by unnecessary parties. There's nothing wrong with making a tool like TeamViewer available to IT administrators, assuming it's properly secured and updated, but it's certainly much more than OT needs. It allows remote operators what they need, but it carries the additional risk of exposing a lot of access they don't. And such broad remote access techniques present an increased security risk, which Oldsmar and San Francisco experienced firsthand.
How does remote alarm notification software add another layer of protection?
So advanced remote alarm notification software like Win-911 allows remote operators access to only the information they need from the SCADA, but not to the SCADA itself or its operating system host. Notification software is compatible with more secure layered networks in which a series of firewalls are used to shield the SCADA from attacks. This is done by deploying notification solutions alongside the SCADA system at the network's control level, and then either using notification modalities that aren't internet-facing or distributing internet-facing notification processes to higher levels across firewalls. So for example, internal email servers, SMS modems, and voice via PBX, those allow communication with the outside world without internet exposure. And then likewise, distributing processes that interface with SCADA from those that interface with external mail servers or VoIP solutions or cloud apps like our mobile app. That allows internet-based notification without compromising security.
Okay, so after those scary stories, let's get to the good part. How can plants and utilities improve their cybersecurity?
Number one, update your software. As a software developer, I can say more and more shops are moving to an agile model. We're keeping up with those threats, but it's critical that people update their software. It's an added cost, but it's certainly nowhere near the cost of dealing with an attack. So number one, update the software. Number two, I'd say deploy multi-factor authentication. So these are passwords that require something else like a phone number, a confirmation code. Those are inherently harder to thwart than a single password. And if you have a system that requires a single password, use a strong password there to thwart brute force attacks, especially if it's something that's up and running all the time. I'd say ensure antivirus systems, spam filters, firewalls, all of those classic IT measures, those are up to date and properly configured and secured, which is a lot to keep up with. The utilities should also take steps to secure any remote access software that they're using. They shouldn't use unattended access features, and IT leaders should configure the software such that the application and associated background services are stopped when they're not in use. Finally, consider integrating a remote alarm notification solution like Win-911.
In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge facing the automation marketplace today and in the future?
Say cybersecurity. It's not only a widespread concern, but the threats are only growing. And moreover, hardening sites against attack is something that often affects and concerns multiple departments within the organization. So coordinating a solution and maintaining it as it changes it's not easy.
What makes Win-911 optimistic about the future of the automation industry?
Well, despite all the challenges and the changes, everyone in the automation industry is striving for the same thing: improvement. The myriad applications I discussed at the start of this conversation, they're all important in their own way. And there are people who want those processes to not just succeed, but to continuously improve. And everyone in the automation industry is dedicated to that cause and will drive that progress. So by raising awareness about some of these challenges like we've done today, I'm confident that they're going to take note and take action, and by and large will achieve that objective.
All right, so I'm going to switch gears completely away from the technical talk and ask you something a little bit more personal. So
Sure.
if you had to choose a completely different career, what would it be and why?
Well, I still think it'd be in software development. I've always been fascinated by space exploration and the idea of writing AI for robotic rovers to explore the solar system. That's something that I've always found really, really interesting. So that's something I read about in my free time a lot. But yeah, if I were in a different era, perhaps that would be a good calling for me.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you're interested in learning more about Cody or Win-911, you can find them on the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Cody, for joining me today.
Thanks, Lisa.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.